In a previous video I showed you how to make different types of exam questions in Blackboard. And today I'm going to show you how to dress that up a little bit by adding images to your questions. So here's a test that I give in a different class, and you can see some of the ways I've used images. I use images in this case, for instance, as a multiple choice question. I use images, there's a few of those for multiple choice. I also use them as hotspots. Here's one where they have to click on the correct answer, so they would click, and if they want to change, they would clear their answer and click on a different one. I also use images for matching. For instance, they have to match the image to the right genus name. So I think you'll agree that having these images inside of my test makes it a bit of a more engaging test. And so today I'm going to show you how to do that. And I'm also going to go over some of the particulars of things that you need to think about when adding an image to a question. Before I can get started in making an exam question with an image in it, I first actually need to go and look at the image itself, and I need to make some considerations about that image. What I've done is I have pulled a few images from different places. A couple of images I took. There's an image of a stomach model, for instance. Here's an image of some tissue, an areolar tissue, and then here's an image I pulled off the internet. And we'll talk about where I got that from and everything else here in a moment, but I want to show you a couple of ways in which I need to modify these images first before I use them. I think the obvious one here is that in the case of this exergonic and endergonic reaction graph, that we have a lot of words on the graph that I wouldn't want to show the students if I was going to ask them questions about this. In addition, I need to also label things so that students know what I'm asking for. So we're going to go into everybody's favorite, PowerPoint. Turns out PowerPoint has some great editing tools for images and some things that are going to allow us to do some quick editing. Now, if I was going to be a little bit fancier and I had more time, I might use something like Adobe Photoshop or other types of image editing programs, but for PowerPoint is going to do the job for us just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and insert. I've just created a blank presentation. I've got a blank page here. I'm going to insert, as I click on this, I'm going to insert a picture, and I'm going to start with the stomach model. Now, there's a good reason to do this. When we capture the image at the end, it's going to be small enough for us to be able to use in Blackboard. What I mean by that is that you need to check the size of your images. And let's go back quickly. So, for instance, if I hover over these images, I can see the size. This one's 96.6 kilobytes. This one is 180 kilobytes. And this one is 1.47 megabytes. Right. The problem with this particular image is that anything over a megabyte has a pretty decent chance of not loading properly in Blackboard. So we really need our images to be under a megabyte in size to make sure that they're going to load properly for the students. Now, normally what I might do is go into an editor like Photoshop and reduce the size, but I can get around that using PowerPoint, as we shall see. So this image initially is too big for Blackboard to really handle properly, but that's fine. We'll get to how we're going to change that in just a second. First thing I want to do is I want to do a little bit of editing, and I want to do so by going up to picture format. And so if I double click on it, it'll take me to picture format. I'm going to crop this picture a little bit. I can clean this up a little bit. Oops, I need to grab the little edges, and I can pull them in, and I think that's looking pretty good. Actually, I'll grab that just a little bit. I'm going to click off the image, and you can now see I have my new image. The other reason I like PowerPoint is that it has all these guiding lines to let you know when something is centered or is lined up properly. Okay, so I'm not quite done. I want to be able to call out certain things, and so I'm going to do that by using arrows and letters. So I'm going to use a shape. I'm going to use an arrow, and let's say I want to point at the rugae of the stomach. And so I can do that with this arrow. Now that arrow is way too small. I'm going to double click on the arrow. I can go up here and I can look at the weight. I can change the weight of this arrow, make it thicker. I like that thickness. I also am not particularly happy with the color, so I'll go back to shape outline. Let's see what pops out. So the yellow pops out against that little bit darker background. Let's use that. Now once I've got my arrow the way I like it, I want to call out some other things, and I can just click on this. I can Control C, copy it. I can click off of it, Control V, paste, and I've got another arrow. Now let's move the arrow. Oh, let's look at the spleen. Now I can take the end and I can move this around. So now I've got an arrow to the spleen. I'm going to add Control V. I'm going to add an arrow to the pancreas. Okay, obviously I can do more of these arrows, but I'm just going to do these three for the moment. And so I now need to add some letters. I'm going to add a shape. Actually, I can add a text box here, and I'm going to type in A. I think I need that to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to increase the size a little bit. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to move my A and see how it lines it up. I'm going to copy, Control C, paste, and I'll drag this one to the next location. Obviously I need to change the letter. I'm going to paste again. Alright, and then I'm going to change the letter. I've got a simple image that I've got some arrows pointing out some things, and I'll be able to ask things about it. So for instance, if I wanted to use a multiple choice question, I might ask what is the structure or region indicated by the letter B? Right? In fact, I could make all three of those questions in multiple choice. I could do matching. I could do fill in the blank. And so I'll show you those different types. But here's what I wanted to show you about the image. I've got this nice image with arrows pointing to things. Now I could save this slide as an image itself, but I'm going to use a different tool. On a PC, you have this snipping tool. Now if you want to find it on yours, everybody that has Windows has this snipping tool. You can type in snipping tool and it'll come up here. And a snipping tool allows you to highlight any place on your computer screen and copy it as an image. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on New. It'll gray out your screen, and then wherever I select, this is my new image. And so it copies it to this screen. I'm going to save it. Save the snip. I'm going to go back to where I was. And I was in this folder, and I'm going to save this as a stomach model label, or labeled. There we go. And I'm going to save it as a PNG. It doesn't really matter. PNG or JPEG is fine. PNGs tend to be a little bit smaller files, so I like those. And so I have saved that file. I'm going to close this out. I want to look at that file. I want to make sure. So you can see now that I have this labeled image. I want to hover over it, make sure that my size is good, and see how it's 946 kilobytes, just under the 1 megabyte that I like to have. Again, a larger size will work. It's just my experience when you have multiple images in a test or a quiz that having each of your images under a megabyte is ideal for this. So this is going to work, as this one is about 50% larger than the other one. So we're going to use that image. Let's go ahead and do the second image. So I'm going to go ahead and insert a new slide, a blank slide. I'm going to insert my graph. And this one is going to be a little bit more fun in terms of, I'm going to get rid of the design ideas, in terms of removing things, and I'll show you a few tricks that not everybody's aware of. First, I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to crop this image, and I'm going to get rid of the top bars here. And so I've done that, and in fact I could even get rid of the I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to use Control Z to go backwards, and I'm going to go back to this. I want to leave that little border at the top. There we go. Now it looks a little bit nicer. And I am going to then start covering up things that I don't want people to see. For instance, let's say I want them to label the y-axis. Well, I don't want to see them see the y-axis. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and insert a box or a shape. And I'm going to cover up this. Now I could leave it like that, but it doesn't look very nice. And so I'm going to format this shape. And you'll look at the top. As I click on it, you can look at the top. There's the shape fill. Now I could do white. The shape outline, I'm going to take away the outline so that there's not a box around it. And so I have something like this. Again, it's okay, but it's still not what I want. So what I'm going to do is I actually would like it to blend in. There's this kind of a neat tool here, the eyedropper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the eyedropper and I'm going to click on that, and it's going to color it. And now, voila, it's gone. And so now I can copy this box, Control C. I can paste it, Control V, and I can move it over there. I can hit Control V again, and I can change the shape of this. Now I can cover up, energy is released. If you can't, you can use the up and down arrows here as well to move it. Something like that. And I'm going to copy that, Control C, and I'll use it over here as well. So you see what I'm doing. I am manipulating these boxes, and I'm doing kind of a poor man's edit to remove things that I would want to ask about. So I can continue to do this, but I think I will add another box, or I'll add a text box up at the top, because one of the things I want to ask is what kind of reaction each one of these graphs might be. So I'm going to insert a box or a text box again. I'm going to insert text, and I might do something like a underscore and then reaction. And I'm just anticipating that a question that I will be able to ask is, what kind of reaction is this? And I'm going to copy this twice because this one's going to be the same thing. And again, I'm going to use my little guides. Another thing I should consider is I should probably label each graph with a letter so that I can say, I can point to or indicate graph A versus graph B. So I'm going to do that as well. I'm going to again insert a text box. I'm going to go down here and type A. I'm going to make it bigger by highlighting it and increasing the font size. I might even bold it. I'm going to put it underneath this graph. I'm going to copy it, Control C. I'm going to paste and put it under here. And I'm going to label this one B. So now I'll be able to, in my test questions, I'll be able to ask for information from graph A versus information from graph B. So we'll leave it like that for now. Obviously, you can remove more things. You can remove the reactants and products, for instance. You can make this a fairly bare graph if you wanted to ask all sorts of things about it. But I've got my image that I want. I'm going to go to my snipping tool. I'm going to click on New. I'm going to highlight this, and now I have an image. I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it as an exergonic reaction labeled, and I'm going to save. And now I'm ready to add these into my test questions. Okay, let's go back to Blackboard. Now that we're in Blackboard, let's go to our control panel. Let us scroll down. We're going to open up Course Tools. Scroll down a little bit more, and we're going to open up our tests, surveys, and pools. So last time we were looking at or creating a pool of questions, and here it is. We'll just add our questions to this. We're going to edit, and this is where our questions are. These are the questions that we made last time. Well, now I'm going to use both those images to make two different question types. So I'm going to use a model of the stomach to create a multiple choice question. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's create a multiple choice. I'm going to go here to multiple choice. And we're going to get to our familiar screen as from before. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to add the image into this box. So I went to add image. I'm going to browse my computer. I'm going to find my image, and that image was right here. And it's going to show up in this box, and you can look at it. It's pretty big right now. I'm going to talk about that. I do want to add an alt text to this. This is again an ADA thing. We're going to just add a model of the digestive system. Don't necessarily want to give away any answers in my alt text here. I'm going to go to appearance though, and if I look at my appearance, it's showing up pretty large. And let me show you without adjusting it what it looks like. And so right now this image is very large. There's a couple of ways to adjust this image size. I can actually just go into the box here, click on the image, and you have to right click to get there, and I can drag these boxes to make it smaller. Sometimes I find it doesn't work the best, so what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to right click on the image, and I'm going to go to image here. I'm going to click on image. It takes me back to where I was. I'm going to go to appearance, and I'm going to limit. I'm going to constrain the proportions. I'm going to limit the size of this, and I'm going to say that the height, so the second one is the height here, I'm going to limit the height size here at 400 pixels, and if I click over here it'll automatically adjust the dimensions. I'm going to update, and now it's a little bit easier to work with, and you may decide, so I'm trying to click off the image here. There we go, I used my arrow key to get off of it. I may decide I still want that even smaller, and we can certainly do that. I'm going to go ahead and hit image again and say, well, maybe it's a little bit too big. Let's make it 300. Now keep in mind, perhaps this is also showing up a little bit large because I've zoomed in on my browser here a little bit, but I can still very clearly see the letters. I can see the model that I'm looking at. And so this is where I might go to the beginning of up above the text, and I will add my question. Identify the structure or region indicated by the letter B. Now actually I'm going to start with A, and I'm going to go down here and add my answers. So I have spleen, I have the pancreas, rugae of the stomach. That may only be one G. I'm going to leave it 2 G's. Again, sorry for the misspelling if I misspelled that. And then I'm going to add gallbladder. Now the answer should be for A. If I go back up, it should be the pancreas. I'm going to go down here and click on the radial button for this. I'm going to hit submit. Take a moment for it to load up. Now I'm going to show you something about the reason I did this the way that I did it. So if I look at the question, here is my question. There's the question, there's the answers, and one of the things I like to do is I like to create sets of these types of questions so that when I set up my test, I can randomly select from those sets. So I have the potential for asking 3 different questions on this image, and so I can do that, and there's a shortcut to doing this. I'm going to go to this test question, and instead of making a whole new one and doing what I just did, I'm going to copy it, and it's going to come up with a copy. And so in this case I'm going to remove, it always puts this copy of here. I'm going to change the letter to B, and I'm going to then change my answer to the rugae of the stomach. And then I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to, and it doesn't matter which one I copy at this point, I'm going to copy, I am going to change my letter to C. I'm going to get rid of that copy of, and I'm going to change my answer to the spleen. Alright, I've just made 3 test questions pretty quickly, and what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to create these 3 as a question set and have it randomly pick one of those to ask the student. And so students that are taking this test, they may be potentially each getting a different question for that particular model, for instance, and that's a really good way to mix things up with the test. Okay, so that's one way of doing this in one type of question. Let's use the graph and let's make a multiple fill-in-the-blank question. So let's go over here to, where is it here? Fill in multiple blanks. I'm going to insert my image. I'm going to go look for my image, and it's this one. Again, I might put a description. Let's see, energy reactions, or I guess I better just put reactions here. Again, you should be more descriptive in your alt text here. But I'm going to go to appearance. I'm going to limit this also to, well, let's make this a 400 initially pixels. Let's see what it looks like. Still a little large. I'm going to go ahead and change that somewhat. I'm going to go back to appearance. I'm going to make that 300 pixels. Again, there's a few other ways to change the size here. Oops, it doesn't look like I changed it much. I wonder if I... Oh yeah. Okay, so there's my image, and then I can start adding questions. So I'm going to add them at the bottom here. I'm going to say something like, what type of reaction is graph A? Now I'm going to put my brackets, my square brackets, and I'm going to put 1. And I'm going to put something like, what is the y-axis in both graphs? And I'm sure that you can find better ways to ask these questions. Of course, the point is just to show you how to do this, right? And so I can keep asking questions. In here, I can ask up to 10 different questions in a multiple fill-in-the-blank a type of question. And so I could ask up to 10 different things about these graphs. And as long as I put these little brackets here, I'm going to bullet point these just because I like the order of it. But as long as I've got these brackets here, it's going to figure out how many blanks it's going to have. And so as I'm going to allow for partial credit. So again, I can ask multiple things here. I'm going to allow for partial credit. I'm going to hit next, and then it's going to let me add my answers for answer for 1 and answer for 2. So in this case, maybe the first one, if I look at this, this should be an exergonic reaction for A. Actually, I don't want to, it doesn't really matter if I use capital or not. But let's say I allow for another response, and so I want to put 2 answers possible here. Maybe I will accept exothermic, and maybe you won't, but I'll put that in here, and I like that. Now for the second one, what's the y-axis? If you'll recall, it was Gibbs free energy, but maybe I don't care if they put Gibbs and free in there. Maybe I just want to make sure they have energy in there. So I'll contain, the answer should contain energy. And so that way that would be correct if they just added, if they could add free energy, they could add Gibbs free energy, or just energy, and each one of those would be correct. Alright, and so we can add feedback as before. We can add categories in the metadata, instructor notes, but I'm done. And there's my question. Okay, let's go take a look at it. And so this is what it looks like for us right now. Just know, though, that what the students will see is they'll see this question, what type of reaction is a graph A, and then they'll see a box that they click on and type their answer into. Now, actually, as I'm looking at this, I want to look at this question. I like the size of that. So I look at the question here. That size is actually kind of small, so I may want to go and just adjust that. So I'm going to go do that. For some reason, it wasn't showing it that small before. Well, it still looks decently sized. I'm going to go ahead and change the size of it a little bit. I'm going to raise it back up to 400 pixels, and I'm going to hit update. And oh, I know what it's doing. It's just sizing it to the window here. But I've got everything done. I'm going to submit again, and I'm going to go back and look at it. It's showing it still fairly small, but we'll take a look at this, what the student looks like, what it looks like for the student here in just a moment. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and we're going to go. I'm going to quickly make a test, and then we'll take it and see what it looks like for us as a student. Okay, I'm back. I had to cheat a little bit. I made a test, and I know we haven't gotten to that point yet. And the next video is going to be how to construct a test using your pool of questions. But I went and made a test quickly so that you can see how these two questions look. And so I am currently in the test. As I scroll down, here's what the students will see. They will see this nice image. They'll see the question, and actually this is pulling randomly from those 3 questions that we made. So identify the structure or region indicated by the letter C. And so we would click on the spleen as a student, and then down here as we go down, we can see the image is a nice size to look at. We can see everything clearly. And then what type of reaction is graph A? So we'll put in here exergonic. And then for the type of y-axis, we'll put free energy. So when I save and submit, it's going to try to it'll grade these automatically. And I'm going to hit submit here, and it will, when we click on OK at the bottom, we're going to see the results, and we scored 10 out of 10 points. Now when we construct the test, I'll show you how to change all of these points systems and things like that, but you can see that it graded it properly and it showed us the correct answers. So that is how we use images in a test. I think it's a very effective tool to deliver test questions in Blackboard if you take the time to add some of these images. Alright, I hope you enjoyed, and I will talk to you next time when we will actually construct tests from the questions that you've made and create a nice rigorous test that is going to allow for variation in the test and limit the student's ability to just share test information or to copy off each other. Until next time.